This tutorial will walk you through how to create a flowchart for a Yahtzee game that we will eventually put in a programming language. I use Publisher just because I find it easy to move the text boxes around and to copy and paste text. So, in any program, first thing that we need to do is start. So I'm going to grab a text box and make a start. And this will actually symbolize my main function. When I create flowcharts, maybe we create one flowchart for the main, maybe we have another for the classes, but this will at least get us started, and we know we're starting in the main, which I'm actually going to call Yahtzee. And the reason I made it red is because I want to distinguish between what would maybe be output to the user compared to what would be programming notes that I can use later. Now I'm going to right click on it and format the text box to have a black line so that when I print this out, it will look like a box. And I am going to create a key in the upper right hand corner so that if I come back to this way long ago or way in the future, I can figure out what the colors meant. So black is going to show output to the user. And of course, once we get to programming, we can change that. We can change what is output. And I'm going to make red programming notes, which is why I put Yahtzee in the programming notes, because I want to make my main project called Yahtzee. And again, I am going to put a black box around and make sure that everything's showing. There we go. There's my key, and I can add to this as I go on. Now, I'm going to create another text box in this corner, and for simplicity, I'm going to use this text box so that I can copy and paste. And it's going to be black line around. And so, copy and paste, quick way, Control-C, Control-V. So, first thing that my user is going to see is welcome. Would you like to? And they're going to give I'm going to give them options. They're either going to be able to play Yahtzee, or maybe they haven't played this game and they need directions. Or, uh-oh, I started this by accident, and they're going to quit. And as my programming notes, I'm going to put that I'm going to have to make a place to get user input, and the user input is going to be 1, 2, or 3. I'm going to shrink my text box so I don't take up too much room. And another thing about flowcharts and Publisher is when you use arrows, you can see the flow of the program. So, now option number 1 is going to be the most involved. So I'm actually going to deal with option number 2 and 3 first. So I take a copy and paste the generic text box I have, and I'm going to treat this one as option 2, and I'm going to display directions. Okay, so maybe I'm not going to tell my user here's the directions, but I want to find something nice that I can output there. And then I'm going to output the menu again and give them the same options. And in programming code, I'm just going to say I'm going to copy and paste the menu. But in a flowchart, I can symbolize that by using arrows. So how did I get to this box? Well, in this box, they created or chose option number 2. So there's my arrow. I'm going to create another text box. I'm going to put the number 2 in it, shrink it way down, move that over so it touches that line. So I know once I started option 2, this is where the option 2 notes would be. And once this is done, it would be similar to if I went back to the main menu. So I'm going to put an arrow heading back. Now, if my user chooses option 3, copy and paste a text box, and I'm going to put in programming language that they are going to just break. That would be the literal word that I would use in the program, and it's going to quit the program, just like they asked. So we'll minimize this text box, grab another arrow, and this arrow, I'm going to create a little number 3. That way I know when the user chooses 3, this is where we go. So likewise, we're going to use another text box and handle number 1. And I need an arrow. If my user chooses a number 1, it's as if I'm going to this text box. Control C and number 1. All right. So once my user comes in, they say, welcome, would you like to? And they choose play Yahtzee. Then I'm going to display their player number. And for this beginner game, I'm going to assume that I have 3 players and that all 3 of them are going to play, no more, no less. As we get done with this program, then we can add the option in for the user to determine how many players they want. But let's at least get the program written before we handle that option. So I'm going to tell my user, you have rolled all dice. And then I need to display what the dice actually are. But since it could be any of them, I'm just going to symbolize the rolled dice with 5 lines with spaces in between. And in programming notes, I'm going to just tell myself that I need to increment the roll number. In Yahtzee, you can roll 3 times, and I'm going to display, I'm going to put a bracket 0 bracket, which will symbolize an array location later. So briefly about arrays. In memory, if we think about arrays as a list, it basically, and most programming books display arrays as this as well, it looks like just a list, and if I get the lines right here, we'll be on our way. So here's something that symbolizes what an array we might visualize from memory. So I'm going to keep an array for the actual rolls that each, when the dice is rolled. So location 0, and why did I put 0? Well, because in computer science, just like we've been doing for a while, we start counting in 0. So this is actually, this location in the array is location 0. This location, the next one, is location 1. So as I thought about this, I figured our location 0 can be tallied for how many numbers of rolls. So here, I'm just going to put R1. So this is going to symbolize my roll 1. So I'm going to increment this first location in my array. And then I'm going to use location 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 as dice 1, or die 1, die 2, die 3, die 4, and yes, you guessed it, die 5. Therefore, when I'm calling these dice and I won't get mixed up. Okay, well, was dice 1 0 or is it actually 1? Dice 1 will, or die 1 will correlate with the location 1. Okay, so that's enough about arrays for now. When we start programming, we will talk extensively about arrays. So, once I am here, I'm going to symbolize R1, knowing that I'm basically going to increment that 0 location in my array that displays my roll of dice. And then, after rolling the dice, I need to give my player options. And, of course, output to the user is in black, so I'm going to change over, and would, capital would, you like to. And they have 3 options. They can roll all dice again, because maybe they were just really not happy, or they can keep some of the dice, or they can keep all of the dice. Again, if you do not know how to use or play Yahtzee, you need to revisit those rules. And I'm going to expect user input in the form of 1, 2, or 3 from my user. So, after I've gotten this far, you can see if I start my program and I head to this page, it's going to welcome me and ask me for 3 options. And I've handled all 3 options. There's 1, there's 2, and there's 3. This will be a good start. Please play the next tutorial so we can finish the flowchart for our Yahtzee game.